In Awakening Prologue, as you know, you have a dive soundtrack and an immersion soundtrack. The dive soundtrack, over 20 minutes, as I said before, takes you down through alpha, through theta, and into the middle of delta. And then the immersion soundtrack holds you in delta for that second half hour. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, people very often say, I really like the dive, but when I get into immersion, I start to feel antsy, or I don't like it, or I can't meditate as well, or whatever. Well, they're often very surprised when I tell them that the immersion is identical to the last 10 minutes of the dive, which is where they're feeling the best. And the reason is that this is really pushing at you. These fluctuations in the brain are hard for your brain to deal with, which is what pushes it to change. And, it's like if you went running and you say, the first mile of my run, I feel great, but I don't know what it is. But the second and third mile, I start to not feel so good. Well, it's because your body has a threshold for what it can deal with, and once you get to that threshold, it starts getting hard. And the same thing is happening when you're listening to, the dive and then immersion. The longer you listen to it, the more it's pushing, And then if you start to push back unconsciously, then it starts to feel a little uncomfortable. Now, actually, what that means is there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of stuff being stirred up, and that's one sign that a lot is happening. I'm not going to get into this now because I'll talk about it in more detail later, but the fact that you may be having some discomfort, or you're not like in this really clear, peaceful space, does not mean you're not meditating well. It may mean that you're meditating better than the person who's in this peaceful space, but I'll talk about that next time. At any rate, when we go on to the custom-made levels, at a certain point, we were still just there was a floating soundtrack that you listen to during sleep, and then there was a dive that has a lower carrier frequency, and I'll talk about carrier frequency later too. But just for now, just realize that the lower the carrier frequency, the stronger it is. So we would put people, same brainwave patterns, same alpha through theta down to delta, and holding them there, but at a deeper carrier frequency. And then putting them with the immersion soundtrack, again, just a continuation of the last 10 minutes of the dive. Then I thought, I wonder what would happen if we made the immersion soundtrack into a deeper delta. And so I made this immersion 1.5, what's now called immersion 1.5. And those of us who were playing around with this went, whoa, hey, this is good. Those of you who have done it, you can tell the difference. It definitely feels stronger. And then later, after we our brains adjusted to that, we said, well, what else can we do? And so we created one that went even deeper. And then finally we created the 0.3, which is as deep as we're going to be able to go. In fact, when I went to create we did the 0.5, and I said, okay, I want to do a deeper one. And I have some pretty sophisticated equipment for creating these tones, and for the frequency counter that I can calibrate the tones to get exactly what I want. I calibrate these to 3/1000ths of a cycle per second, which is a very, very narrow range. And it takes a long time sometimes to get the frequency, the machine that's creating the frequencies to stick to that fine tolerance. When I tried to do the 0.3, I couldn't do it. I could not get my equipment to that fine of a calibration to hold the 0.3. And so I called up Bud Lowry, and I said, Bud, you have better equipment than I do. If I described to you how to do this, could you make the holosync for me for this? So he called me back about a week later and said, I can't do it. I can't get this. It's too fine of a gradation. I can't do it. And he said, but although I have retired, I can go over to the CIA laboratory and use their equipment if I ask the right person, and their equipment will probably do it. So when you listen to the Immersion 0.3, I want you to know that you're listening to something that was created in the CIA laboratory on, the government's equipment. Lord knows what they're doing with this equipment, but so
Such a cozy feeling.
yeah, cozy is, yeah. Well, if you knew Bud, he's a cozy kind of guy. So that's what the deeper immersions are. They're just taking you deeper and deeper and deeper into delta.